What is for us is, this is chapter 9. Okay? Chapter 9. How many of you have the book? None of you have the book. Anyway, if you have the soft copy, that is also no problem. So this chapter 9. Chapter 9, can you read the title? Apartheid thinking. This is the article which I am going to give you today. And why I am starting this before Age of Iron? Because Age of Iron is actually, this is the concept which we find here. You know, the theoretical framework is here. Out of that theoretical framework, events are happening somewhere. So those Age of Iron is an event which is coming out of this idea. So that's why I thought of discussing idea first and then the events. Is it okay? Right. So in this way, what I am going to tell you today, if it is possible to you, please write it down. These are the significant ideas, because this idea which I am talking, they would be the whole idea which is going to explain everything about related to your event. So if primarily little bit of that ideas you are writing, understanding, you will be able to actually conceptually write your answer for the whole unit. Few texts are there. And the writer of this Thinking Apartheid Thinking, is written by J.M. COETZEE. And we all know J.M. COETZEE is a white man who was residing in Africa, and all of his life he wrote against race and discrimination, racial discrimination. And that's what he got Nobel Prize also. We know he's a Nobel Prize laureate, and in literature he got Nobel Prize. So, and what are the ideas and the concept here I'm trying to give you. So, in the beginning, in this first para, what does he say? He's using two words. One is madness of history, and the second is confession. Okay, so how do you define these two ideas, madness of history and confession? And what does he say? I'll be skipping many of the things and then I'll just come to the main point. You see, if there is an orthodoxy among historians of apartheid today, it is that apartheid was not different in nature from the policies and practices of segregation. You know segregation? Literal meaning of apartheid, you know? Segregated society. Segregation on the basis of race. Okay? So segregation means keep these two communities separate. And they are divided. Their schools, white children's school is different and black children's school is different. Their institutions are different, their hospitals are different, their residential colonies are different, even if the office work is also different. For example, Harvard University. Harvard University was considered initially when it was, came in a form, it was for the black children only. The oldest university in America. So, only black children were admitted there. It was not for the mixed community or, mixed race. Only blacks were there. So, that's why segregation. And this idea was thought by some theorists. Some people who thought of this idea that let the society divide, and then on the basis of color, we have to rule. So, and we all know by this time, 1945, the time period is exactly the time period when apartheid was implemented in 1948. 1948. In 1948, apartheid was theoretically, practically, constitutionally implemented, and it was written in the constitution that from now onward, on the basis of race, society is being divided. And if you try to mix up, if you try to break the law, maybe you are so-called liberal, or you are so-called sympathizer, you will be punished. So I am right now, when I am talking here, I will be trying to talk about, I think this is better this time. So when I am talking about this segregation, by that time I am just trying to give you how this has come in a form of institutionalized system. And here, J.M. COETZEE, who has been against this system, and he's writing. And it's a kind of documentation how this policy system came into existence. So initially he says that nowhere in the world, nowhere in Africa, nowhere in writing community, nowhere in literature, you will find two kind of people. One who come and accept it was a madness of history. You see, any system, any community, any literature, any constitution which is propagating discrimination. Do you think this is work of a sane people? This is insanity. It could never be democratic or inclusive or in the benefit of humanity. So those who implemented these ideas, they had madness. Somewhere they had madness, but the second word I use, that is, first is history of madness. The second word is confession. Do you find anyone from the white race, they have written books where they accept, yes, we are strategists, we are shrewd people, we are cunning, and we want to use your resources, your labor, your money, your nature, and that's what we are implementing these apartheid theories. Do you find anybody would come and confess? Do you find anybody would come and confess or tell me the name of the books which has accepted that yes, patriarchy was a systematic exploitation to utilize labor and energy and resource of women? Do you find anywhere in history where those who are believing in the caste system, they have written it openly, yes, we are shrewd, cunning people who want to utilize the labor of those untouchables, 85% population of India, and we are just after their resources. So we would call them uncivilized, barbaric, dirty, native, black, demons, Rakshas. These are those people, and we are superior, civilized, sophisticated. See, if you are so sophisticated, go and work in the field. If you are so sophisticated, go and clean the latrines. If you are not cleaning latrines, if you are not working in the fields, if anybody would be sophisticated. So we don't find anywhere the confession is there that people come in front and they write, yes, it's a strategic writing. And when we oppose caste system, when we oppose racial system, and then, from the people who oppose it, what do they say? I'm not doing that. I'm not a casteist. I'm not anti-women. It's there in the history. It's written there in the Shastras. And that's why when Ambedkar opposed caste system, he said, break the sanctity of Shastra. You challenge the Shastra where it is written. And then find out the writer and demolish it completely. And write new writing, which comes from margin, which comes from feminine perspective, which comes from subaltern. You got the point? So these are strong, clear ideas is telling that how apartheid is being implemented. It was a cunning strategy. It was a cunning. Could you please close the door? Yeah, please. Right. So, and there is one word which is used in this article, Afrikaner. There are a lot of social, political, economic, literal, multiple senses of this word, meanings of this sense. Afrikaner. Afrikaner is a white minority, which is, they are ruling community, and it's kind of, on the basis of color, a group of white people is there. And this Afrikaners, they have sense. So it's very interesting. I mean, when we are proceeding there, you would enjoy. So then he says that apartheid legislation was by no means irrational response to social development which threatened the expectations of Afrikaners, the privilege of white South Africans in general. So Afrikaners are privileged white South Africans. They are white. In fact, COETZEE is also white, but is always writing in favor of blacks. And what is the difference between COETZEE and those who are non-confessional history? Those who wrote history, those who formulated ideas, because he is confessing this happened. You know, at least confessional, some part of confessional history we can find out through his books, where he's openly confessing, yes, it's white shrewdness. And then he says that white liberals who diagnosed apartheid as a form of hubris or madness. The synonym which is used here is hubris, hubris or madness, madness, and by denouncing it in such distance themselves from, ultimately in the reading attempting little more than to distance from their continuing material complicity of exploitation of black labor. What is that? The main motto is to exploit the labor, and which is of specific color. Patriarchy is also based on the same funda. Exploit the labor of a particular agenda, women. Caste system is also, if you see, read the Varna system, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, they are being divided. And the particular task is being assigned. Brahmin will preach and teach. Kshatriya is a ruling. Vaishya will do the business. और इन सबकी सेवा कौन करेगा? शूद्र. इसका काम ही है सेवा करना. उसको काम ही दे दिया, पूरी जनरेशन को, कम्युनिटी को, कास्ट को ही काम दे दिया कि आप तीनों वर्णों की सेवा करोगे. ये तो एक्सप्लॉयटेशन है. And untouchables, they are known as avarna. These are 4 वर्ण. और उसमें भी आपको डिस्क्रिमिनेशन बता दूं. The Brahmin can have 4 wives. When we talk about marriage system, a Brahmin can have 4 wives. एक तो ब्राह्मण होगी और 3 ये हो सकते. जब आपको क्षत्रिय, वैश्य और शूद्र पत्नी कैसे रखोगे? वो तो अछूत है, अनटचेबल होगी. इसलिए आपकी बराबरी नहीं है, तो हाउ कैन यू टच अ वुमन? सो ब्राह्मण कैन हैव 4 वाइफ्स. क्षत्रिय को, भाई ये टॉप में आ गया, तू ब्राह्मण की तो नहीं रख सकता, 3 रख ले. वैश्य कैन हैव 2, एक अपनी वाली और एक दूसरी वाली. एंड शूद्र तो एक ही. अब ये तो मैं तो मैरिज की बात, स्ट्रेटजी के साथ. अब रेवेन्यू की बात. रेवेन्यू क्या? टैक्स. भाई सब काम कर रहे हैं ना, रेवेन्यू तो देंगे ना. स्टेट को टैक्स कौन कितना देगा? ब्राह्मण कितना देगा? ब्राह्मण तो देगा ही नहीं. भूदान वो तो ब्रह्म का देगा. देखो यहाँ ब्राह्मण का मतलब मेरा किसी कास्ट से नहीं. प्लीज राइट. आई एम टॉकिंग इधर. Ambedkar also always made it clear Brahmanical thinking. And untouchable can also have a Brahmanical thinking. Brahmanical thinking का मतलब होता है discriminatory thinking. When you basically believe in discrimination. So, revenue system में क्या होगा? A Brahmin is exempted from any kind of tax. I'm talking about Varna system. Kshatriya will be paying 25% of his revenue. If you are earning 100 rupees, 25% you have to give to state. State को नहीं दोगे तो वो आर्मी और राजा के खर्चे को सब कहाँ से देंगे? राजा साहब को थोड़ी खेत में काम करते, और खेत में काम करके भी 4 लोग कितना कमा लेंगे? So, Kshatriya will be giving 25%. Vaishya 75, 50% देगा. और ये कितना देगा? 75%. अपनी इनकम का 100 रुपया कमाना है तो 75 रुपये तो ये स्टेट को दे देगा. एक तो अपनी पत्नी भी दे दी, स्टेट को पैसा भी दे दिया. मतलब रिवर्स में गाड़ी चल रही. फिर आपने तो देखा होगा जनेब पहनते हैं ना, थ्रेड है ना, सेक्रेट थ्रेड बोलते हैं. अब सेक्रेट थ्रेड में भी बड़ा सिस्टम है. A Brahmin will be wearing silk thread. सिल्क का धागा पहनेगा. क्षत्रिय जूट का पहनेगा, जूट. वैश्य will be wearing वो उसका जूट के बाद एक होता है जिससे हम वो बोरी बनाते हैं, कॉटन कॉटन, और इसको भी परमिशन। और जो अनटचेबल्स हैं they are out of state, and if you want to understand what is untouchability, you just read Ambedkar's Who But Shudra, this caste and race, which is better. Ambedkar's one article is there where he is giving 6 points and he is comparing caste and race, which is better, और वो ultimately conclusion है कि race will be better. Because why race is better? In racism you treat somebody as a slave, but at least you accept him as a human being. Untouchability में तो human being ही नहीं है. It's just like dog or animal. You allow them to stay in your home. You feed them. Medication धंधा काम धंधा दे देते हो. When you buy a slave, it's मैं अमेरिका को पढ़ मेरे आइडिया है. पहले सुनो. I think even पहले सोचो लो, वो तो दोनों ही खराब है, पर अमेरिका उसमें भी कंपैरिजन बिल्कुल बिलो स्टैंडर्ड, उसमें भी कंपैरिजन होगा. और कितना खराब? आप समझ रहे हैं? क्रिमिनल दोनों ही है, पर कौन ज़्यादा बुरा है? इस comparing below the standard. So he says that in a race, when a master is buying a slave, is buying because he knows I have to utilize your labor, so I'm buying you. And you remember in America, there is one place. Particular place I'm forgetting its name. It was very prone to malaria. Where generally right now also much black population is residing there. And this place was very prone to malaria. And no master wanted to send their slaves to that particular area. तो वहाँ जाएगा, बीमार पड़ जाएगा, इलाज नहीं करा पाता. उसमें भी काम लेना है. एक काम लेना है तो तुम बीमार होगे तो मेरा काम कैसे करोगे? So they never send. At least they are taking a slave as a human. That please भाई बीमार मत पड़ना. बीमार पड़े, take the medicine. But Ambedkar says, first and foremost thing which is so degrading in caste system is you never even think that the other is a human being. That's the first difference. Any person who is living being, human being, will need food. For that, if you can't have food, you work for it. काम करोगे? When you work for food, you need employment. Somewhere you will work. You give your labor, and then somebody pay you. But यहाँ तो labor भी use नहीं लेंगे. हम तो तुम्हारा कुछ लेंगे ही नहीं. You are untouchables. You can't enter in the city. We are not giving you employment. We are not taking you as a human being, and we are not bothered whether you die or live. So these are all, these are very internal things which we come to know about. If you have any doubt, please ask me. Okay, so you know what? But here, COETZEE is telling two things. That the bottom line is what? Exploitation of the black labor, exploitation of the women labor, exploitation of the untouchable labor. Work for us. You are our servant, work for us. Okay. And for that, all strategies are made. All plannings, all strategies, all writings, everything, constitution changes, everything is done. And what is that? He says, we'll come to the theoretical part of apartheid, where how it is being written, how it is being formulated, how it is being implemented. Made it as a constitutional and institutionalized system. Right. Then, he says, you will never find that anyone is coming and accepting that this is madness of us, this is madness of white race, that we systematically exploited the labor of blacks. Second is, he says, no confessional history. The madness is everywhere. See, there is, have you read Manusmriti? Manusmriti is an anti-caste, anti-women document. And it is written by Manu. So it means madness of history is there. People are writing all mad things. But do you think anybody would come and confess, yes, I'm mad, I made this theory to exploit more than half of the population of the world. So no one would come. So these 2 points is making that you find everywhere the madness of history is there, where literature written in favor of exploitation. Let's say patriarchy, caste system, race, gender, all kind of discrimination which you find there. All kind of literature is written, like Article 377. It was institutionalized because the system and the society propagated that. But after so many years, 70 years of that, we realized that it is inhuman, because we didn't hear the voices from the margins. When voices from the margins came, the protest came, and then now things are changing. So, and then he says, but to call apartheid mad is by no means to imply that the liberal capitalist segregation that preceded it was sane. It makes sense of a kind indeed to argue that both were mad, rationally or economically. A self-interest do not have to be the same thing. Logic that makes apartheid to be sane, because rational governed by self-interest. Even if you say it's rational, it's primarily self-interest. Interest of few. Very few people are having the interest, and they want to exploit the system. And why they are powerful? Because they are in governance. They are in legislature. They are in parliament. They are making laws. Even if they are white minority, even if they are Afrikaner, they are very small in number, but they are rulers. Any rule regulation which is made in the parliament, senate, anywhere, the rest of the public has to follow it. There is no other way. So that's why he says that, but no one would come and confess it. It was written for the self-interest. No one would come and say that we are mad. Even if you ask Manu, he would have a lot of justification why, it's anti-women document he's writing. So then he says, the theorist, okay, in between there is third thing he's talking about. Categorically I said black, white. Exploiters, exploit. Two category, but there is a third category also there. These are white liberals. So-called white liberals. These liberals you will find everywhere. So they become so sophisticated and an innocent face of that exploitation. But the practical thing is they never change anything apart from speaking. So these white peoples, what do? The theorists of apartheid justify the doctrine on the ground that it was in the long-term interest of whites. Apartheid demanded sacrifice, they said, but in the long term such sacrifice would pay off. Like poets, detective turning to be the most obvious place for the hidden letter. And then, so apartheid, do you think implementing apartheid was such a easy way? No. I think this is the most difficult thing to implement. You can actually manage millions of army because they have one mind, one stature, one rule, one regulation. But it's a diverse thing. So implementing apartheid, do you think all blacks will behave same? All whites will behave same? And all the time, all women will be thinking same? No. We are human beings. We are affected by our individual experiences, situations. So you can't do that. And then he said it was very difficult for the Afrikaners to implement this apartheid. But you know what they thought of? Implement right now, it's difficult, but later on you will be paying off. This institution will pay off. So in this way, you would be able to control complete one race in your control. The way Varna system made one race complete. Work for three, rest of the three. और उसको इतना rigid बना दिया The system was made so rigid. Caste system, you know why caste system is problematic? Because it is birth based. The one and only problem with the caste is you can change your religion, but you can't rebirth again. Now I think of I choose my parents, I go there and take the rebirth. Is it possible? So that's why Ambedkar said it. A caste system is a birth based blot which you can never remove. Can we change how I am born? Can I change my gender? My color? हो सकता है? आप कहोगे मैडम ऑपरेशन करा लो. For that you need lot of economy. And moreover, you need to feel like that. है ना? वो बहुत लंबा process है. And how many people would go for that? People settle down. जो है ठीक है. If you are born as a boy, fine. If you are born as a girl, exceptional है तो फिर अलग है. Then we have space for LGBT and all. So how many people would be going for that? Do you think all of the untouchables, they would go and change their color or gender कर लेंगे? नहीं ना, it's not possible. So then he says, and this race is also birth based. The color you cannot change, how much you bleach yourself. The notion I will explore here that the man who installed apartheid, or at least some of the time were processed by demons. और लोगों ने क्या कहा? You know, when this whole apartheid theories and everything was there, by the time we were under the influence of the demon. Madness. People gone mad, then they thought of Varna system. People gone mad, that's why they wrote Manusmriti. So you just blame somebody else. That bhoot aa gaya tha se. Under some influence. And then he says, I realized pinning it nowhere at all. When you pin it to the demon, when you pin it to the third person, you're pinning it nowhere. You are not getting any solution, you will not get any remedy. Until and unless people come from that section of society and accept that, yes, we were mad. It is madness and it's a confession. We are confessing. Two things I'm again telling you. Madness of history and confessional history. It is never happening. That's what? And that's why these exploitative systems go on. The indifference of South African historiography to the question of madness and tacit censorship in the social sense, while madness like what used to be called illegal Bantu, B-A-N-T-U, Bantu, may be conceived to have, find out what is this illegal Bantu, conceived to have the place in society. This is ontologically a place apart, a non-place that does not entitle madness to part of history, should arouse nothing but mistrust and make us redouble rather than abate our efforts to interrogate the demons of past. And then he says, you know what? The contemporary scholars, the contemporary scholarship, excuse me, are you finding something funny? Hasi aa rahi hai. You want to go and take the break? Don't do that. Don't do anything which creates suspicion. Okay? Okay. So what he's saying that, you know, when you go for institutionalized, okay, so it's not like people didn't condemn apartheid, segregation. Church call it sin. Church call it sin, because church is one of the biggest institution which is governing before this democratic system. Church is one of the institution which is actually governing the whole society, and church call it sin. But do you find church any time made it as a crime? If anybody is practicing it, will be punished severely. Did you find anywhere? These are verbal lip services everybody is doing. So he says that people would do lip service, and that's what the significant point I'm reading. Churchmen call apartheid a sin, not because it was crime of huge dimension, and notion of crime has an inbuilt weakness. Crimes are defined by the victor, and apartheid was not a victor, but because it sets itself task of reforming, that's to say deforming or hardening. So actually church called it sin, but it hardened more. And here I'll give you an example. When Ambedkar was talking about, he was not talking actually, practically he was working against caste system. And he was rising as a leader of untouchables. So at one point of time, and remember one thing, all of you please, I'm reminding you, don't record class. Okay, any one of you, please don't record class. This is illegal from the student side. There will be action against you without permission if you record it or put it anywhere in a specific way. Okay, because you know, if we are under the fear of this, that this thing could go wrong, then there is always, it is hampering the expression level. So in the class, it's a rule of, I don't know about Delhi University, but Department of English, yesterday there was a meeting. Students are not allowed to record anything. Right? Got the point? Okay. So when Ambedkar was fighting against caste system, he made it a point to Gandhi. And what point he made? He said that if you are, because then Gandhi started Harijan movement. So he said that if you are so much keen to destroy this caste system, make it compulsory for all the population that joining Congress means non-practicing caste system. The membership fee for joining Congress was 1 rupee or 2 rupee, I think. If you want to join Congress, just pay 2 rupee and you become the lifelong member. Then Ambedkar said that don't take 2 rupee. Take the promise note where they will declare that we will not practice untouchability. So verbal exercises are there. Racism, segregation, apartheid was only able to be banned because ultimately Abraham Lincoln made it to the Parliament, Senate, and it was institutionalized, constitutionalized that it is illegal. Practicing apartheid is illegal, punishable offense. Okay, so that's what then he says. The contemporary historical scholarship on apartheid suffer from self-imposed limitations. To approach apartheid from the outside, treating only its working in the world, churchmen call it a sin, and but actually church made it more hardened and more deforming. So it didn't come in the form or a positivity to the sufferer. It has become more confused and more complicated. And that's what then he says, you know, I approached the writing of Geoffrey Chauncey. Geoffrey Chauncey is a very significant writer. We will be discussing him a lot because he's the brain behind segregation. Mastermind hai ye. Today we are going to discuss 3 things. Primarily, I'm giving you the pointers. 3 things I'm giving you as a pointer. We'll try to understand what COETZEE is talking about, because you know the idea that we are talking about apartheid thinking. Apartheid means segregation, and segregation is considered to be the origin of race, right? How this discrimination of white versus black started. So there are 3 things in continuation we'll go, and these 3 things are initially, if you remember, I said you exploiting the black body and its labor. That's the basic idea, and this exploitation system is prevalent in all other exploitation systems of world. When you talk in terms of gender, exploiting the body and labor of women. When you talk about caste system, again the exploiting the body and labor of those so-called termed as Shudras or untouchables and untouchables. I won't say Shudra or untouchable. Shudras are different and untouchables are 5th Varna, that is Avarna. So these are the exploitative system which are there, and we have understood before this through the writing of COETZEE, that what he says that it's a kind of madness of history, and there is no confessional writing which accept that these exploitative systems started. It was a strategy of few cunning minds that set together formulated idea, and then it is penetrated. Now when you are formulating an idea and you are trying to penetrate it, because there are a number of statements in this article where you will find that it was in the favor of Afrikaner. Afrikaner, I have already told you, that is a white minority, ruling minority. And they know how to sustain their interest. If they need to have food, then they need land. And if you are 4 people in the family, you can't go and till 100 acre of land. You need labor. For that matter, you need some helping hands. How would you exploit those hands? And these minor tricks also goes, if we understand at the minor level, in a very small tricks, tidbits, when there's that domestic workers working in our home. We give them different kind of allurement and different kind of hegemony. Many kind of strategies goes on. But the ultimate reason is, please come 28 days out of 30 and work for me. And this is the amount which I can pay you. After that, it's all, sometimes we say, it's God made you poor and we rich. God made you like this and we this. So then to sanctize the idea, to make the idea work, number of different theories are implemented. And in that term, then the divine theory, the origin theory, then some mysterious theories are there. Divine, some people are born high, some are born low. Where is the logic? So nobody is going to find out logic. You surrender, you just go to God, don't question, don't put any question, just surrender. Samarpan, devote yourself. Put the logical mind behind and just go and surrender. Because the surrendering will only make you questionless. Otherwise you will be questioning. And when you are questioning, you cannot be devoted. So there are 3 things he is saying. The same things are applicable with the caste. First he says, exploiting the black body and labor. Second, keeping the black body out of public sphere. Third is process of bastardization. Bastard. Avoiding the mixed race blood, mixed caste blood. So that's what the caste system works properly. What Ambedkar says, endogamous and exogamous. So if you have to maintain the sanctity of caste, endogamous marriages are prime tool. The moment you go exogamous, it is mixing of the blood. The child which is born out of white mother and a black father will not be able to defend either white or black. It's a mixed race. A child who is born out of anuloma or pratiloma marriage, upper caste or lower caste mixing of blood, they won't be able to justify caste. So mixing of blood, that's why Ambedkar also focused on the marriages, inter-caste marriage. If you want to break the continuity of relation, inter-religious marriages. Because inter-religious marriage, inter-caste marriage, interracial marriages will bring the mixing of blood. And the moment mixing of blood is there, next generation is without all the defense and the logic which you are putting in favor of caste, race, gender and all. Okay, so then it's a wonderful thing we are coming here. In its greed, it is apartheid. In its greed, it demanded black bodies in all their physicality in order to burn up their energy as labor. They will keep them labor. I mean, 100 of years we are listening. Girls are not good in mathematics. Do you have any proven theory? They are not good engineers. The better job for girls is teacher. You become a teacher. They are not good drivers. Do we have any proven theory? The only thing is we want to debar them from encroaching that area. If women are coming in driving area, maybe 70% accidents will not happen.
Driving there is some kind of...
What is that? 3 things we discussed today.
Exploiting black body and their labor.
So, black body as a labor, then discarding black body from a physical sphere, public space. And third is process of bastardization. So, when the moment you talk about bastardization, it's a purity of blood. Purity and pollution of blood. The same purity and pollution attached with caste system. Okay? So that's how this, and these are the system which fails because it's a flow of a river. Human nature is a flow of a river. At some point of time, at some limit, up to some extent you can control. Ultimately, it has to break the shackles. It has to move its own way. That's why right now, if you see, the caste system is not in the present exact form as it was there. It's not there. People talked about merit. Now merit is also a myth. People talked about look, color, that is also gone. The moment untouchables started having good food, green vegetables, and good, proximity of physical labor and good opportunities of education, everything is discarded. Now you can't simply find out, oh, they look like that. It's not like that. So opportunities, scientific inventions, time flow, so many things have broken those illogical, unscientific barriers. So that's how you have to remember how COETZEE is trying to control race. Physical proximity, physical labor, and then process of bastardization. When you write the process of bastardization in bracket, please write down purity and pollution. Notion of purity and pollution. Is that, the way this segregation started, and that's why there are 3 things he's talking about. One is keeping the blacks physically out. Okay, so that's how you decide the territory where certain people will not be allowed to enter into that. Maybe it's a parliamentary, maybe it's a social structure, maybe some geographical area, or maybe some issues on the basis of that you don't allow. For example, in patriarchy, women are never allowed to talk about property, asking for the property right, or intervention in the education. So you remember 1972, that runaway wife issue, or that so-called angels of the home. A woman is being, in romantic Victorian time, this is a proved phenomena that woman is happy in the household work. But that's not there. You didn't ask women whether they want to be to become a house angel or not. And when the opportunities were given, most of the women chose out of home. They chose out to go out. Right? So earlier it was domesticity and keeping the women in a primary one particular area was a notion which was existing and which it was undisputed. And the same thing happened in the caste system also. Okay, it has already been decided that these communities, these castes will not be given education. They don't deserve these green vegetables. They don't deserve good food. They don't deserve these particular areas. That's why they were taken away from the territory. So that's why they were taken away from the village. So you just see how this deciding a proper space or denying access to the space is the major issue. There are 3 things we have to remember, and these are very strong issues. Number 1, the territorial, denial. Okay, territorial denial, where the Africans were denied to enter into particular territory. For example, they can't enter in parliament. They cannot be part of education system. Because of the color, they can't choose certain occupations. They can't leave the territory. And the area has been fixed. Even the occupation were also being fixed. That you will be slaves and you will be working in the plantation only. And how? This is for the man. Then black women, they are exploited doubly. they have to go through the physical exploitation, which will be abused by the white man, and then at the same time producing children, and at the same time working in the field. So women were triply marginalized. So and moreover, they were the victim of the black patriarchy also. The way Indian women is, Dalit women is victim of upper caste patriarchy plus Dalit patriarchy. So this is how, primary point we have to remember clearly, because both the things, thinking apartheid thinking and Age of Iron, it's written by same writer, so they are going hand in hand. One is denial of territorial space. Second, there is a precondition for that something which is there you cannot change, and that is based on the birth, okay, or skin color. So when you are born as a woman, you are denied, because you are penis envy. You don't have penis, you are a woman, so that's how you won't be given property right. Vita Sackville, we know. Today there was a beautiful article in Hindu, LGBTQ, talking about the rights of LGBT, because the June month is Pride month for the LGBT plus LGBTQIA plus community. IA is what?
One is intersex, I think asexual.
Okay, so IA I couldn't understand, but LGBTQIA plus community. So, and there is, the writer is talking about 1984. One novel was written. It was, Mr. Baldwin, who happened to be gay in America. That's the novel. And the character is gay. So, that's how the struggle is there. Right now, being a straight woman, being a straight man, we are accepted in the society. But if you come from LGBTIA plus community, then there is no acceptance even. So, that's how denying the space. Do you think those, transgenders or third sex, they are accepted in the society as it is? They cannot have house rent, they cannot get house rent, they cannot get admission their children in the school, and it's not acceptable in the society. They are not being called in a marriage function or any other socialite, intermingling. So, first is denying the territorial space. That's how you fix the territory for women, for blacks and for untouchables. That this is your area fixed, you don't come to market, you don't come to property, you don't come to business, and you don't come to temple. So these are the territorial spaces where economy, management, administration and state policies are being run. The rules and regulations are being set. Initially, if few parliament, if you see of India, they are 98% men. 5 parliament means 25 years of India. And you see how many legislations would have been made in 25 years which is against women. So that's how, first. Second is something which is birth based. Being a woman, you cannot change your gender, your sexual identity. Being a Dalit, born as an untouchable, from the untouchable parents, you cannot change your birth. You are not being asked where to born, whom to born and which place to born. So, the birth-based condition. That birth-based condition also comes out of your race, your sexual identity and your caste identity. And then, this is one, territorial, denial, birth-based, and then third is purity and pollution. And if you see all these 3 aspects which are so much, clearly associated with racial segregation, okay, purity of blood, okay, and from where this purity of blood is coming, no one knows. So this purity of blood, certain blood is pure, certain is not. And what is the logic? Who decided that? What is that? It's no, we don't know anything. So, Ambedkar said, if you read the volume 1, where Ambedkar said, what is democracy and what is caste system? He's saying 2 things. When I gave your answer, that day we were debating. So what he says, caste system means the endogamous marriages. Existence of endogamous marriage is a caste system. The Community and no caste means exogamous marriages. Okay, we cannot talk on the basis of sentiments and whether you like it or not. The fact is our society is still endogamous marriages. कास्ट के अंदर शादी करते हैं लोग, कास्ट के बाहर शादी नहीं करते. The moment intercaste marriages are there, it would be, next generation would be mixing of blood. They won't be identified with upper or lower. It would be a mix because they would have respect for both. Okay, so then this is the first generation which is going for exogamous marriages, outside caste marriage. This next generation will be mixing. Third generation, caste finish ho jayega. That's what only Ambedkar is saying. And then he says one more thing, what is democracy? Where you can live. Simple democracy where you can associate yourself, where you can live. That is a democracy. And it has everything else. Your social mobility is there, your political ability is there, you are not being denied any kind of space, gender, I mean, you know, the birth-based identity or any kind of purity and pollution, which is not existing. So that's how these three things he's talking. And all these three things, if you keep the parameter of these three things, racial segregation, denial of the space, second is purity and pollution, and third is birth-based. Okay, all these three are associated in the age of iron. Take these three parameters and put your age of iron into this. From this, the apartheid thinking to age of iron to apartheid thinking, we can, you know, come and go, cross. Okay, so what is that? What is that? The thing is, if you see, everything is so categorical in age of iron. The lady, Mrs. Kurian, she's ailing lady. She's having cancer. Her daughter is not there. She's writing letters to, because you know, it's a strategy of a writer to accumulate informations. The other day I was reading about Franz Kafka, and that's a very interesting story. You know how he became writer. So Franz Kafka died at the age of 40. He was very young and he's very famous. Okay, so what happened? He was sitting somewhere in a park and he saw one small girl was very disturbed. She was very disturbed. She was searching something. He went to the girl and asked, what are you searching? Then she said, I lost my doll. And then French also started searching the doll with her. And they searched a lot and they didn't find anything. So next day, but he was so much of disturbed by that sight that, you know, the girl was searching her doll and she couldn't find out. He became so disturbed and associated with the situation. Next day he comes to the same place and searched the doll. And the girl also came. She was a small girl, maybe 7, 8 year, 5, 6 year. And then he said, he showed a letter to the girl. He said that your doll has written a letter. I found a letter. Maybe, you know, before she lost, she wrote this letter and this is where. And the girl was so excited. She was so excited to listen what her doll was telling. And then he wrote a letter. He read out the letter. Next day again the girl came and he also came, and the letters, correspondence from the doll to the girl. And in this way the story is being woven. So that's how, you know, writers, and they become so much sensitive. And that's how, this is how the human intervention we find in the one and only theme, if you can identify with age of iron, that is human intervention. Apart from all kind of rules and regulation, there is only one thing which is, that's why, see, if these theories would have been so strong and so scientifically proven, till the time we would be having racial segregation. Till the time the shackles of the start, today we are going to talk about, you know, the concept or the basic assumptions and the basic principles of apartheid. What are the basic principles on which he is trying to make the concept of apartheid and its working, how it would work. And before that, if you know, last time when we were discussing about how this exploitative system, which is based on the one notion and one idea, one concept, that is, this concept is not confessional, but it's indirect. And that what? Exploiting the black labor. That's what, when I was talking about this colonial aspect, and this how this, the Europeans are searching the colonies. So primarily their concern was to get this raw material and the human force whom they can engage for the work. And for that, then there are a number of theories are being implemented. Today we are going to discuss. Can you please close the door? He is going to talk about three things, and these three things are, I read just one single line of all the three concepts. It's from the text, and then you will get it. It means apartheid. It demanded black bodies in all their physicality in order to burn up their energy as labor. So what was, when I was talking about the confessional history, when I was talking about the madness of the history, confessional writing and madness of the history, what was that? That no one would you find that any writer is coming and accepting this fact that yes, this is the plan, this is the systematic strategy to exploit the black labor, we are making this apartheid. What was the theories given? Theories are divine theory. The divinity, some people are born high, some people are born low, and some are, they have God's grace, some don't have. And then the notion of purity and impurity. So women are being called impure because they have menstruation, right? So maybe on the basis of some biological identity, maybe. So what is that? When you say caste is also biology, because some people are born in the low caste. So that's why Ambedkar says caste is a birth-based blot which cannot be removed. Where will you born? Who will be your parents? Which region and which family you will be born? It is not in our hand. What would be your skin color? That you cannot change. And whether you would be menstruating or not as a female, it is not your choice. So you see, those biological identities are made as a debate, as a barrier to go for upward mobility. So that is why, what is that? When the theorists who are implementing this theory, they thought of making such demarcation. And what is that? The demarcation was that you are black, your color is black, so that's why you have to work for us. If you just give, because this is what, the right race is pure. Why? Because as a black you have to work, because you are impure. And who said it? It's said by God. God says, those who are black, they are impure. Those who are untouchables, they are impure. You are not born as a touchable. You are not born as a white. So that's your fault. That's why you have to be there. You are not born as a man, and that's why you are menstruating. So that's why your blood is impure. Your menstrual blood is impure. In fact, the menstrual blood is a life-giving blood. It's a blood which brings out new life. If a girl is not menstruating, she cannot produce children, and she is not considered to be auspicious in the society. No one would marry. You just go and just even do a fun. If some marriage proposals are coming and you simply say that I don't menstruate, next time nobody would come. Because if a girl is not menstruating, she cannot have children. That's what. So, in an anxiety about the black bodies, it is also made law to banish them from sight. So, if you are black, you are unsighted. Keep off. And that's what same thing happened with the untouchables. They were kept away from the village. They are not seeable. They are kept away. Apartheid did not understand itself and could not afford to understand itself. Its essence from the beginning with confusion, and confusion it displays widely all around itself. So whatever theories were given related to apartheid, they were so illogical. They were so shallow that they did not sustain for a long time. But what are the theories? Let us understand. Primarily, the notion of color. White is pure, black is impure. So that notion of purity and impurity is divine. There is no remedy. You cannot change it until and unless you have a magic to change your skin color, which is impossible. And then apartheid will remain a mystery as long as it's not approached in the layer of heart. If we want to understand it, we cannot ignore those passages of its testament that reach us in their heart, speech, and autobiography and confession. So if you find any writing which is confessional, if you find any autobiography which is accepting the fact that, oh, this strategically implemented, this is the reason that apartheid was there, to exploit the labor, you would not find it. But magically you will find that COETZEE says, Kronze, when he's writing, he's little confused and unconsciously he's revealing the fact. So Kronze himself is not declaring that I am a confessional writer, I am a strategist, but through his writing you can make out. And that's how, in a very smart way, COETZEE find out his writing confessional. That's what you please listen. I approach the writing of Geoffrey Kronze, I treat them as a confession, not as a repentant confession, far from it, but a confession of belief, a credo all the more revealing for being all of ignorance and badness. In what seems old-fashioned innocence, Kronze fall into delirium of writing with a lack of reserve, lack of pure, prudent self-censorship. Prudent self-censorship. Prudent means wise. So, wisely you become smart enough and write strategically. For example, straightforward, if you say, they are wrong, we are right. It's a straightforward black and white statement. But if you say, I think it could be right or maybe that, it's a diplomatic statement. So, unfortunately, Kronze is writing in a black and white. He's not so prudent enough that he could approach diplomatic writing and put his theory. So that's why his writing is confessional. Kronze falls into a delirium of writing with a lack of reserve, a lack of prudent self-censorship quite foreign to his successors in academic bureaucratic castle he helped to build. But later on, whosoever his writers are there. And there is one name which is mentioned here. That is, please write down the name if you want. N.J. Rudy. N.J.R.H.O.O.D.I.E. He is his follower, and then he is also writing enough about apartheid. So that's why right now I am giving you 3 ideas. We are discussing 3 ideas. The idea of exploiting the black labor, number 1. Number 2 is keeping the black body out of territory. Denying them the physically draining away black bodies. Page number 167 of your text. And third is, the third point is process of bastardization. These are the 3 things we are going to discuss, and these are the 3 pillars which is continuing apartheid. So, what do you understand by Geoffrey Kronze, 1907 to 1992, graduated from the University of Stellenbosch in 1929. Then, like other nationalistically inclined young Afrikaner intellectuals of his generation, continued his studies in Germany and Netherlands. Then, he returned to full enthusiasm and goal of methods, participating in European rights. European rights were basically white rights, white racial rights. And then there are certain other intellectuals, H.F. Verwoerd, Nick Deriches and Piet Meyer, all of them detained to become a powerful force in the land. Armed with the doctorate from the University of Amsterdam, he was soon elevated to the professorship in sociology at the University of Pretoria. He remained there in academic life until his retirement. And then his ideas were basically politically active from early in his life. Kronze joined the pro-Nazi party, Pan-Dutch Student League, and helped found Afrikaner National Student League. So this National Student League was basically about the white race and the group of white boys who were talking about their rights and their their own community and society. So later he retired from, and then after that gradually, immediately after that, he became a very prominent political figure. He joined the party, and after that he became prominent ideologue of the party, and he started writing. So when from 1945 to 1948, he wrote 4 books. And these 4 books are the basically, because those who were the boys initially and those who formed the party National Student League, they become the leader of the same Africa, South Africa. And then whatever ideas and policies they were implementing, they become the government policies. And then from here we find the start of apartheid. So in 1945, he wrote one book, A Home of Posterity. 1946, Africa Without Asiatic. Okay, and this is the book. 1947, Just Race Apartheid. 1948, Guardianship and Apartheid. So these are the books which becomes the fundamental ideologue of the apartheid theory. In 1948, COETZEE faded and was allowed to fade away because now his debacle is there. But what we have to read is, right now what I'm going to give you 3 things. First is utilizing the black labor for the whites. Second is physically draining away of black bodies. So the physical space, that's why this whole notion of segregation is there. So some most fertile lands were kept by the whites and infertile lands were given to blacks. And hospitals, institutions, education, working place, everywhere the segregation is there. And to maintain this segregation, the purity of the blood, there are a number of theories implemented. But there are many interesting things we would come to know. So what is that? Now to maintain the sanctity of the pure white race, the rules and regulations were formulated in which mixing of the blood. And you know what? Mixing of the blood is denied everywhere. Let's say caste and race. In caste also, intercaste marriages are completely denied. Because if a marriage which is from the lower to upper and upper to lower, the next generation will be mixed race. So they would never be able to defend lower or upper. The notion of this upper and lower doesn't exist because they are the mix of that. If a children born out of white and black, they would be of mixed race. So for them, this racial discrimination doesn't exist because they are the mix of that. So that's why if this happened continuously, the mixing of the white and black and the mixing of the upper and lower, then after some time you would find that neither race is existing nor caste is existing. So to maintain this sanctity, purity of blood, it was made clear everywhere that the mixing of the blood is not possible. And for that, the segregation rules and laws were made so stringent, so strong that nothing is possible. But what happened? There, see, let me just read out something and then I'll explain you. Okay. In the purity of the blood, it was made clear that a white woman is never mixing with a black man or vice versa. Just segregation. No white man is visiting black woman in any form, right? So that's make the law so strong. But this theory is also not properly workable. And how these variations come, so what is that? Then the notion of the purity was reinforced on the women. Women were controlled. Women were controlled that she would never be able to have marriage or any kind of relationship. White women were controlled and strictly banned to mixing up with black man. Okay, so this, because women can be controlled, but the same thing can't be done with the man. What happened if white man is secretly mixing with a black lady? Is it possible to control the whole population, the whole nation? It is not possible. So that's what he says. Just listen it. There is a second feature of the dedication and deserve not. COETZEE implicitly does not cast the Afrikaner father in an equal role as protector of the blood purity of the people. So blood purity, the responsibility of the blood purity was kept on the shoulder of a woman, that she would not mix up. Translated into biological term, the dedication implies by the confining herself to man of pure Afrikaner blood. So then the woman has to decide that whomsoever she is meeting only with a pure white blood man. Pure blood white man. That's what she is meeting. And to pure in another way, what keeps the blood strain pure in women confining themselves to men of pure blood? The question poses itself, why this blood strain not equally kept pure men by confining themselves to the women of pure blood? Okay, then this is up to here, it's okay. But then, when you talk about bastardization, it is very difficult for a woman to find out whomsoever she is meeting or maybe having a physical relationship is pure, pure blood and he's a white man. How would she find out? It was very difficult for them, right? And then there is a concept of secret bastard. You know secret bastard? But if the way for war to remain pure-blooded is so far its women to have intercourse only with the pure-blooded man, how are its women to know they are not having intercourse with one of those secret bastards? If we expect COETZEE to answer that women have intuitive ways of telling, we will be disappointed. No such power is attributed to them. If you believe thus, feminine chastity itself is no guarantee of continuing blood purity and will be protector of the race only as long as she too is protected. So what he says that you can only protect the blood purity if you protect the women. And that's why the women are being controlled more. They are being more controlled. Right? And that's why then you have to make stringent laws. As husband, the Afrikaner will guard the chastity of his wife, and father, he will protect the purity of the race approving man with whom his daughter will mate. Here, if you read this line, you would definitely find similarity with Manu Smriti. What Manu says? A woman must be guarded when she is a child through her father, when she is young through her brother, when she is married through her husband, and when she is mother through her sons. So women need protection, and she need to be protected by male in different form. Father, brother, husband and son. She need protection. She need to be protected. And when he says that the purity of the blood, if you read the Geoffrey COETZEE, Career and Reputation. Geoffrey COETZEE, 1907 to 1992, graduated from the University of Stellenbosch in 1929, then like other nationalistically inclined young Afrikaner intellectuals of his generation, continued his studies in Germany and Netherlands, whence he returned full of enthusiasm for the goals and methods of parties of the European rights. Contemporaries of among his intellectual elite include H.F. Verwoerd, Nico Diederich and P.T. Mayer. Of all them destined to become powerful force in the land, armed with a doctorate from the University of Amsterdam, he was soon elevated to a professorship in sociology at the University of Pretoria. Remained in academic life until his retirement. Politically active from early in his life, COETZEE joined the pro-Nazi Dutch Studenthood, Pan-Dutch Student League, and helped found the Afrikanese National Student League. Later, he was recruited into Afrikaner Broederbond, League of Brothers, and secret organizations created to advance Afrikaner interest and become a leading figure in the policy forming deliberations. During the 1930s, the Broederbond had given its energies to cultural polities and policies of the landless poor white. But with the wartime economic boom generating large-scale black migrations to the cities, to begin intensive internal discussion of the plan for radical racial segregation and self-governing African reserve. The idea embodied in Kronje's were seminal in these discussions. Between 1945 to 1948, Kronje wrote or made substantial contribution to the four influential book, that is A Home for Posterity, Then Africa Without Asiatic and Just Race Apartheid, and Guardianship and Apartheid. Though he continued to polish steadily thereafter, his reputation rests on these works on which the National Party drew heavily in constructing a platform for the election and brought it to power in 1948. After 1948, Kronje faded or was allowed to fade from a vanguard role in his research and writing. He began to focus upon more narrowly conceived social work among poor Afrikaners, and later upon his hobby of classical literature and evaluation of his life's work written during heyday of apartheid by N.J. Rudy gives an idea of how he was seen at that time by establishment social science community during years of ferment after World War. Writers Rudy Kronje attempted to bring about a sociological responsible evolution and diagnosis. The South African race problematic. The South African race problematic. The scientific rigor of his policies proposals to be commended. His books of his period taken together constitute the first comprehensively argued principal exposition of the system of ethnic relation that after 1948 would crystallize as apartheid. Numerous policies directions that Kronje suggested today already found part of statutory apartheid. Others then subscribed in the principle by government with a blend of academic formulation and crudeness, reminiscence of the Kronje himself. Rudy identifies as arguably Kronje's greatest contribution. The insight that the key, the Bantu problematic, is the physical presence of the black and white South African, and that the best solution would therefore be physical draining away the term to conservation, but all to sanitary engineering. In retrospect, we can see that in elaborating the doctrine of unique Afrikaner walk, charged with the historical duty of maintaining its own uniqueness, Kronje and his fellow behaved much like nationalist intellectuals worldwide. It was not their nationalistic fervor, but the step they were prepared to take realized their dreams that set apart. Born in more than once to the periphery of empire, young educated ambition Afrikaner men like Kronje in the decade after the Anglo-Boer War, AD 1999 to 1992, had found only a few avenues of advancement open to them: the law, the church, teaching, and lower levels of bureaucracy. Their aspiration thwarted, they turned to enthusiasm. Their solution to the crisis of overproduction and exclusion of intellectuals like themselves was to work for a separate state in which their energies would find employment. They set about affirming the Tom Nairn's world, militant interclass community, rendered strongly, if mythically, aware of its own separate identity vis-a-vis the outside force of domination. They worked with the only materials at hand, the people and the peculiarities of the region in inherited ethos, speech, folklore, skin color, and so on. Nationalists work through differentiate like those because it has taking their constituencies, the rural poor and impoverished urban Afrikaner, they build upon them the Afrikaner walk. Kronje's first book is dedicated to the author's wife and other protectors of the blood purity of. The dedication is worth pausing over. The compaction of the noun mother, which epithet Afrikaner, though not only grammatically irregular, the Afrikaans here carries a heavy ideological fate. Concise and unconscious. Consciously, it is an expression of the syntactic character of Afrikaans as Germanic language and stands in opposition to the alternative analytic Afrikaanse. linguistic politics and itself with the nativist movement in Germany of writing German language of non-Germanic element. Unconsciously, it is morphological figure of the introversion, exclusion, inclusion, embrace. It looks forward to a lexicon in which there will be hundreds of entries for emotionally charged round setting Afrikaners. Afrikaner mother, Afrikaner sin, Afrikaner blood, Afrikaner loss, Afrikaner mother, Afrikaner family, Afrikaner blood, Afrikaner farm. Is thus the morphological, metaphor and lexical metonym of Afrikaner uniqueness of Afrikanness. There is a second feature of the dedication that deserve note. Kronze implies does not cast Afrikaner father in an equal role and protector of the blood purity of the people. Translated into biological terms, dedication implies that by confusing himself to man of the pure, Afrikaner blood, Afrikaner woman keeps the blood strain pure, and put into another way, that what keeps the blood strain pure is women confining themselves to the man of pure blood. The question poses itself, why is the blood strain not equally kept pure by conforming themselves to the women of pure blood? The answer, though simple, is central to Kronze's genealogical imagination. Bastardy, the issue of the intercourse of the Afrikaner man with a woman not of pure blood, is defined in Kronze's scheme, that is bastard. One who is by custom cast out into the population of the bastard. The issue of the intercourse of the Afrikaner woman with a man not of pure blood, on the other hand, may remain as a viper nurture in the bosom of Afrikaner walk. The child takes on the racial classification of the mother. Bastard women by definition give birth to children who fall into the bastard category. Pure blood Afrikaner women, however, give birth to the children of the walk. If one of these children is in fact in biological bastard, it will grow up a secret bastard and insidious weakening force within the nation. But if the way for the walk to remain pure blooded is for its own women to have intercourse only pure blood man, how is women to know that they are having intercourse with one of the secret bastard? If we expect Kronze to answer that women have intuitive ways of telling, we will be disappointed. No such power is attributed to them. Thus, feminine chastity in itself no guarantee of continuing blood purity. An Afrikaner mother will be protector of the race only as long as she too is protected. Behind Kronze's dedication, therefore, lurk an patriarchal threat to promise. As husband, the Afrikaner will guard the chastity of his wife. As father, he will protect the purity of the race by approving the man and whom his daughter will meet. Confronts two problems as defined in the Kronze's problematics, the problem of the native and the problem of the colored. But before he sets out his solution to those problems, Kronze addresses in one of the most extraordinary paragraph in the book covert words to his readers. Whenever Afrikaner express themselves on the South Africa's racial problem, says Kronze, there are those read with a magnifying glass, searching for evidence to present the native and colored. That Afrikaner is their greatest enemy, such reader Kronze clearly has liberals and their running dogs in mind. The dangerous and account must be taken of them. What his countrymen are about to read, they are warned. Will there be a self-censored, but the warning is doubled. Remaining readers of the need for the censorship is also alert. Them to read between lines and but lack into the text this had been censored out, and this invite them to constitute themselves Leo Strauss, an esoteric reading community. As far as the nature of that has been censored, that is clearly signaled through not spell out formulations that will make the Afrikaner sound like enemy of the native and colored. That is to say expression of hostility towards them. To reach Kronze fully, then to join those his readers who are in the known. The aspirant's reader must put a black into the text of hostility whose converts expression and been euphemized or elided. In defining his problematic in the term of the natives, colored and Asian, Asiatic and against whites, representative of the West European race, Kronze sketched a fourfold racial typology. Elsewhere he added fifth race, the Jew, which scientific basis has his typology, little the knowledge, Afrikaner historical and tradition viewpoints is based above all on the experience of the racial differences. The racial differences are simply, in other words, the categories of folk ethnology or walk ethnology, are consciously accepted as the given categories with which the history of the ethnic contact and conflict in South Africa will be played out. Race are seen as self-constituting group constituted by overpowering definitions exercised by the usual hostile others. Sociological speaking, this is not unsophisticated nation of what race has been in South African political history. Though not one that Cronje consistently hold, much of time he falls back on the conception more in tune with the European racial science of the first half of the century. There are also times when he falls back on the nation of the nation, preordained part of the criteria, the racial diversity of the planet he always must be protected, bastardization, which implies, in addition to irreversible elimination of differences, a mishmash, something unnatural. Each race has its appointed task in God's larger scheme. For instance, a monotonous African must suggest Afrikaners have predisposition repetitive labor, monotonous rhythm. But if bastardization mixes the races is a sin against certain has white led South Africa, which bastard colored population numbering millions, not only implies in the sin but gaining. In responding to the charges, Cronje relies on colleague G. Ilof's earlier rewriting of the history of white colorization. In early years of Dutch settlement, Ilof and Cronje conceded there may have been a certain amount of sexual mixing with indigenous people, but within generations or two, the apartheid concept has taken root in the fact most colored people are likely to be descendants not of the original colonists but of the British soldiers discharged at the Cape in 19th century. With regard to blood mixing, the colored presents the utmost danger for the European race in South Africa. The second chapter of the book deals directly with the Bloyd war meaning, for which misgeneration is less than adequate translation. The etymology of the misgeneration is mix plus gener, kind and stock, and because mis a productive prefix in English and general a negative meaning, there is every reason to think that most people read the words and miss thus losing the kernel notion of mixing. Accordingly, I prefer blood mixing, which translates mix directly through, even so does not capture the perfective force of Vermang mix, so that of unmixing will be possible. In 1939, Cronje recalls the South African government appointed a commission on mixed life marriages. This commission, whose mandate did not extend to investigating interracial sexual relation in general, recommended that mixed marriages should be banned by law, inter alia because they produced person who would pass a European and had, thus Cronje's words, a seeping of non-white blood into European population. Seeping. In 1939, Cronje recalls the South African government appointed a commissioner on mixed marriage. This commission, whose mandate did not extend to investigating interracial sexual relation in general, recommended that mixed marriages should be banned by law, inter alia because they produced person who would pass as European and thus lead, in Cronje's word, seeping of non-white blood into European population. Seeping is another key term for Cronje's imagination, variable in form of Afrikaner in Dutch, and he uses in context where it easily change places with its rhyme word in sleep, steal. Secret bastard who tries to find a place in the white community and bad of the white woman. Dive, this sly stealer. The semiotic nexus evoked is one of the dark, treacherous fluidity. Neither the Commission nor Cronje, who was, of course, supported the recommendations, confront and
questions of why a person should fly in the face of public opinion to make the mixed marriage confronts that is question of desire, but COETZEE does approach indirectly. There are white born in the country who have designated to such an extent in respect of the morality, self-respect and racial pride that they feel no objection against blood mixing. White must protect themselves against these conscienceless and criminal blood mixture by making all blood mixture, illegal intercourse punishable. The individual is responsible for his community for all of his activities. The nation community is entitled to call for the dock everyone who acts in conflict with its highest interest. For the interest of the nation always overweight personal interest. Here, as he moves into full flight, Anju leaves behind his more prudent academic bureaucratic pose. The passage ethos not only Nazi notorious Nuremberg status but moment that characteristically denunciatory minatory tone of Hitlerian oratory itself. The condition of social disorder following the Great Depression, says COETZEE, have forced many poor whites to live in mixed residential area. Concomitantly, a steady pressing in non-white into white areas has taken place, creating a living higgledy-piggledy. Also means confused and mental confusion. Mixed living in one of the prime social cause of blood mixing. White in mixed area loses their ties and with the walk. Unconsciously, a gradual process of feeling equal, that is non-whites, begin to take place in them. The distance between white and non-white diminishes here, for elsewhere COETZEE understands striking lapse seems to be unconscious that his word can be read in another light as an argument that is interracial tension will be reduced by the social mixing. Mixed area become the dying places of the white race in South Africa and most fruitful soil, bastardization. Social disorder and blood mixing threaten to create single South Afrikaner mishmash society. A mishmash society is another term white pausing over and in addition implies mixing up. It is a cognate of English mangle, most cognate with English as term from cuisine. In everyday uses is always derogatory, implying mixture in which not only individual character but also original structure have been lost. What is left behind is shapeless, undifferentiated and pulpy, much like face in fact, whose among white are the treacherous blood mixer. COETZEE defines four types. One is Jew, another the visiting soldier or sailor, and third the mentally retarded poor white. This leaves us with those whites born in South Africa, low graded people. The phrase ethos Alfred Rosenberg, who have degenerated in morality, self-respect and racial pride. To the extent that they feel no revulsion against blood mixing, a few marry across the bar and mix blood. Extramaritally at night undercover the darkness. They steal into the black and colored, which they commit reason against the white. Yet by day we see them amongst us, their slaves and conscious, but they usually keep us respectable front. These degenerated in sleepers have a distinguished from the secret bastard within the white community of the white blood pool. Having in his own eyes demonstrated the threat the blood mixing holds for the white race, COETZEE proceed in the second half of in an arsenal of the counter measures, beginning with the residential segregation and segregation in the workplace of culminating total racial segregation. If there must be immigration, immigrants should be screened for blood purity. The apartheid measures are not intended solely for the South Africa, he concludes. Day will come when racial policy for the whole of the Africa will be needed to ensure the survival of the white race and prevent what will later the return of the confusion and had thrown and chaos. The three chapters that COETZEE contributes to the collaborative book Rig Verdice Ras Aparthied repeat many of the arguments, however, brood further in enigma desire natural unnatural. It is natural, he says, to desire mixed blood with the blood of one's own kind. It's natural or unnatural to desire mixed blood with the blood of another race. Is the natural kind of the species or the race, if the former, and we may expect there continually cross race boundaries, and thus the struggle to contain it within the race boundaries will be never ending. If on the other hand desire openness naturally within them and desire across racial lines unnatural and bestiality, and can the theory be bred out? The question is restarted in another form is aversion to sexual contact with other race determined genetically or culturally. His own desire is clearly from the former. His inclination is to treat blood mixture and degenerated to identify blunting, a form of progressive degenerativity. But the existence of the mixed blood population in South Africa looms up the fact that the brute magnitude that cannot be ignored, to extent that colored people are descendants from early white colonists including his own forebears and Afrikaner. Not even Kronze can deny that some of them may be. The forefathers of the Afrikaner people must have persuaded degenerated practices. Kronze is therefore compelled to produce an account of the aversion situated within the history. Thus he may revise the extraneous account of early colonial history. For the generations or two in the 17th century, he concedes there may have been no prejudice against blood mixing. However, as the eye of the colonist became open to the extent of a difference between the race, aversion grew in that become an integrating part of the everyday attitude towards life. In fact, was assumed to be an instinct, but it was not a true instinct. Just as it was brought into being the specific circumstances, so changing circumstances could lead to its loss. Such circumstances may already have arrived with a socio-economic decline of white and the rise of non-white, hence immediate need of residential segregation. Clearly, Kronze is in tight corner. If aversion is not instinct linked, specifically coordination, then decision to maintain the social environment that endangers aversion cannot be justified as transcendent duty to the further of the biological race. The decision to maintain its or recreate further be told created for the first time circumstances in which blood mixing will be impossible will have to appeal to different mandate. This is why Kronze's shift is ground from the biologism to the idea of the organic walk. During this growing up period, the disintegration of the indigenous culture must be prevented at all cost. If blacks become de-tribalized, they, like the colored people, will be swallowed down by the process of westernization. Unable to observe Western culture, they will in effect become a culturaless mass. Culture to Kronze is always a structure of difference with which individual lives and which sustain. Loss of the difference is typically figured, a diagnosis and definition. Deterritorialized culture and undifferentiated mass in the sense lumpiness, but also post-tribal pre-political clothing. The negotiations of the perilous growing up phase will require that black and white live in separate homelands under separate socio-economic systems. The separation will remain the white man from daily view of the black man and an unattainable white culture. The unattainable white culture lifestyle to do not become the object of the envious desire. It will also remove the black from view of the white and prevent the black from becoming object of white sexual desire. What must above all reject is the present race mismatch, which will be soon into a mishmash race. Thematic. There is a small set of theme around which Kronze thinking obsessively circle. The chief of these is mixing. The semantic poles of the Kronze racial version are marked by, on the one hand, the word anders, difference, and or unique. Apart from that, and the other word is mix, mush, mesh. This polarity most marks not only his thinking but the very texture of his discourse. At the moment, he will be marking off boundaries, tracing differences, erecting system, and general acting of the part founder, patriarch over new territory. At the next moment, he will descend into hectoring, rumor mongering, salacious imagining, obsessive and uncreative world play. Different is the world Krunze wants to belong to, is the world and repudiate with most vehemence, but in again return by his imagination. There is something Krunze is haunted by, let me call it simply CC, is the sign of the difference by the difference law.
Okay. So, this is apartheid we have to study. I mean the COETZEE, right? COETZEE, hai? So, through this article, because if you understand this article, apartheid thinking, it is trying to give a complete theoretical perspective how apartheid was thought of. Then, in support of that thinking, lot of literature was written. We will discuss what is that literature, what are the books which are written, what is the time period, and then what was the basic motive behind that writing. How first a thought process came in the mind of people, few people, and by the time when they are thinking of apartheid, they had one thing in the mind, that is how to utilize the resources of those who are not among us, how to utilize the resources of those others. These others could be Asians, Chinese, African, non-white, colored population, anything. Then they chose the place. Geography is playing a big matter, because geography decides our food, our culture, our even if consciousness also. So these natural resources, if you have abundance of water, then the children grow conscious related to that water. Life revolves around that water. If you are in a dry land, your consciousness, food habit, culture, literature, everything is affected by that geography. So geographic resources were primary in the minds of who wanted to exploit. So then lot of strategies were implemented, and then because these are the few people who are sitting and talking, so any idea which is just simply talked and discussed cannot sustain long time until and unless it is written properly. So why these ideas are written? Because all the time you won't be there to educate coming generations. We decay, we engage in different circumstances, we become ill. So to store the idea, what you need to do is to store the idea, you write it. And when the written document is there, and that's what Ambedkar also said, from where the caste system has come. Caste system might have been thought by some people to utilize the resource of have-nots, majority of population. So how this Brahmanical idea of caste came, that we are the people, we need some laborers to clean us, to engage for us, to do our daily labor, daily core, field work and everything. So then they implemented the idea, and that one thing is very sure for everywhere. For everywhere, that is that either the discrimination will start from the divinity, some sense of divinity is there, or birth based. Right? So biologically you are a female, and this is not in our hand to change. So why male superiority is there? Because they have formulated some basic idea that, okay, this has this, you don't have that. And the logic is, you cannot have that. The other day, come to more theoretical framework. Okay, so then, did I mention last time Geoffrey Kronze? I didn't mention Geoffrey Kronze. Please come. So, initially, COETZEE is saying there are two concepts he's saying: madness of history. Okay, and these so-called self-liberals, white liberals, they are against apartheid, they are against racial discrimination, but practically they are not doing anything. If they are so rational, they should come in front of the history and write it down and commit that this is mistake we have done. Do you find in patriarchy anybody would come and they would accept it and write it on record that yes, we were shrewd, we were cunning people, we thought of utilizing labor of women, and that's why we formulated patriarchy. Did anybody would come? No. So he says two things: confession and madness. He's using two words: confession and madness. Everywhere we see the madness of history is there. And what is that madness? The madness of history is that on the caste system, so much of literature is written. Against women, so much of written. Right? And then the protest also came from other side. People rejected. Ambedkar wrote Annihilation of Caste. So the opposition come from those who were exploited. The exploiters are not. So lot of literature is written in favor of patriarchy, in favor of women discrimination, in favor of untouchables, in favor of apartheid. So this is madness of history. If you see the history, lot of literature is there where people have written. We always find everywhere these so-called liberals. You are not against the idea. You are not with the idea, but actually you are not against the idea also. Otherwise, what he says, if you are against the idea, come forward, write it down and commit it. So one is madness of history, where all mad literature is written in favor of exploitation. But no one is coming and they are admitting that we have done this. This is a shrewd idea. This is we are the people behind. We are the masterminds of this. So they are the terrorists of literature. They are terrorizing society through literature, and no one has come. So what he says then, the theorists of apartheid justify the doctrine on the ground that it was in long-term interest of white apartheid demanded sacrifices. So what is that? And this theory is applicable to everywhere. Let's say patriarchy, let's say caste system, let's say apartheid, or any other form of discrimination based on linguistics, geography, gender, whatever it is there. Right? So then he says that initially you just have to implement. Some people thought of writing this Manusmriti and then implementing the idea about Varna and caste. Few people did that. And then the theory was implemented and everybody was exploited. So he says that initially you have to do that. It's a little hard work you have to put, but then you will be rearing the crop lifelong. So apartheid went for a long time, and ultimately we just see the horrific this presentation of humanity where one person is selling another. And if you just go and see the YouTube and just type how these indentured laborers were escorted transport from Africa to America or any other part of the country, you cannot imagine. You would not be able to see the complete documentary which is there available. So then he says, this notion I will explore here, that man who invented and installed apartheid, or at least some of the time were possessed by demons, pinning the blame of apartheid on demons. I realized pinning it nowhere at all. And did you find anywhere in the Indian literature, from the ancient to till date, any book you find that how cunningly it was there from the people who are implementing the theory? From the opposite side, we will find a lot of. We won't find. And that is why Ambedkar write in this Who Were Shudras. He says that for long time, almost for 60 to 70 years in Indian education system, this untouchables and Shudras, they were not allowed to teach history in the classroom. Because the moment you teach history, you teach from your perspective. Women, minority, untouchables and Shudras, they were not allowed to teach history. The other day I was standing in a market and somebody asked me, what is the problem with the history? Then I said, it's a long debate. I'll explain you sometime. Why people don't talk about chemistry, physics, bio? And then the question was very wonderful. Chemistry, physics, bio, किसी के लिए problem नहीं होती. History को लेके क्यों problem होती? मैंने कहा history में जो पढ़ा देते हैं ना, वो आने वाली generations की नई सोच होती है, which is going to change the whole nation. That's why history is so significant. That's why we are thinking, writing from margins. That's why this subaltern writing is there. Right from the women perspective, when we talk about national movement, how many women writers are there? How this writings from the women perspective is written? We don't know that. So right from the margins, subalterns. History, I will write from my perspective. I have been neglected for so long. I will write from my perspective. So that's why he says that, you know what? So when those implementing the theory of apartheid, they blame it to the demon. From where this idea of apartheid came, from where this idea of caste system, women discrimination, LGBT discrimination and all kind of linguistics and other religious discriminations came, it came out of some demons, you know. So when you are pinning it to demon, you are pinning it nowhere. You are letting the question loose. And that's what the indifference of South African historiography to the question of madness and tacit consensus of the social science that while madness, like what used to be called the illegal Bantu, may be considered to have a place in society that is ontological, a place apart, a non-place that does not entitle madness to a part of history, or should arouse nothing but mistrust and make us redouble rather than abate our efforts to call off interrogated and demons of the past. But no one is coming consciously and accepting, we are the shrewd minds, we did that, consciously we did that, and that was our purpose. We don't find, and that's what he says, he blame it to the madness of the history. No one is there. And then he's using two words, madness and confession. I have already told you. Okay, and then contemporary historical scholarship and apartheid suffers from self-imposed limitation. Those so-called liberals. The so-called liberals who talk about liberty, approach apartheid from the outside, treating only its working in the world. Churchmen called apartheid a sin. Churchmen called apartheid a sin. Did you see any church which is completely banning, punishing the people, Afrikaner, who was practicing apartheid? Did you see any church? Afrikaner are few minority, white minority in Africa, and those were the ruling parties. They were in parliament, they were in industry, they were in resources, they were the head of the institutions, they were the statesmen. So he says that we talk it, blame it to demon, and people are so-called liberals. They come and then they say a lot. But did you see church call it sin? And do you know one thing?